This program is a presentation of UCTV for educational and non-commercial use only.
Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce Kara Swisher here and welcome her to UC Santa Barbara's Technology Management Program and our final lecture of this quarter and this year. A little bit about Kara. Kara is currently co-executive editor and author of All Things Digital and her column Boomtown, which covers digital issues in the Wall Street Journal. She has an impressive range of journalistic experience with a forte in technology. As a graduate of Georgetown University and Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism, she has worked as a reporter for the Washington Post and authored 2 successful books. And since 1997, she has been with Wall Street Journal, covering breaking technology news in both print and digital media. She currently co-produces and co-hosts All Things Digital, or D7, a leading conference focusing on technology and media industries. The conference features unscripted interviews with major tech players. Some of them include Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and this year we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more, especially some with Twitter. I was looking at the article about that coming up. So the conference is coming up in May 26th, so make sure to check out D27 Conference, which promises to be one of the best yet. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kara. Let's get digital.
Great, I don't need that. Right, I'm going to stand here. I'm a little short, so why don't you all figure something engineering about that? So I actually, a little bit incorrectly put my bio out. I actually don't work for the Wall Street Journal anymore. I quit the Wall Street Journal 2 years ago to start my own company with Walt Mossberg, who works for the Wall Street Journal, who's a technology reviewer there, pretty well-known technology reviewer in the whole world, actually. And what we did is we started a startup that is owned by the Wall Street Journal, the company that owns the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, which has since been bought by Rupert Murdoch. So I suppose Rupert Murdoch owns us. And it is a separate technology, a technology site and conference business that we run for Dow Jones, and we do it independently. I do it out of my house. In the back of my house, I have a cottage, and all my employees are virtual. We don't do nothing in print, practically. And in fact, the reason we're doing it is because we, several years ago, decided print was in very serious trouble, as is happening today. And we felt like we didn't want to work in print anymore because it was something that was going to go away, and we wanted to create a purely digital technology news and analysis site, along with reviews and other things, and video and everything. To see the writing on the wall of what was happening, a lot of journalists have not seen the writing on the wall until recently, and now they're whining quite a bit about it and blaming Google for their problems, which is easy. We decided we wanted to be proactive and try to create something with high standards and a lot of value for the company and for ourselves. And so we have an entrepreneurial relationship with them. We get some of the profits that we make, and a lot of the profits we make, which we are profitable. And so we're doing it kind of separately. So I myself am an entrepreneur, I guess, which is unusual for a journalist, I think, because most journalists, as much as they write about other people's problems, tend not to want to take any risks. And so in the future, journalists are going to have to really become much more entrepreneurial, like all of society, really. So I'm going to talk about a couple things. I didn't bring a PowerPoint. I'm really sorry. I can't stand PowerPoints. We ban them at our conference for all the speakers that come. Everyone likes to pull out a PowerPoint when they have nothing to say. That's what I always think. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit, and then we'll have questions, because I think they also numb you into like complete stupor. It's the plot of Bill Gates to do that, to numb people into stupors. So I want to talk a little bit about some 5 key trends that I think I see happening that you have to be paying attention to if you're getting into the tech sector, especially in Silicon Valley, where still, geographically, is still the most important place on earth for entrepreneurialism because of the location, the universities there, the money, the venture capitalists, and the people. It's interesting in this sort of digital age, even though it's becoming more widely dispersed, there still is an importance to geographical location for Hollywood, for anywhere else. That might change in the future, but right now, Silicon Valley is essentially still the center of tech innovation that's going on. Not innovation necessarily, but certainly activity in terms of venture startups and things like that. Although there's some occurring in Boston, at least in this country. There's lots going on all over the world, but just in this country. Some in Los Angeles, a little bit in New York, but it still remains the center of tech innovation right now. So when I talk about 5 key trends you need to understand that are going on right now, and some of them are very obvious, some of them not so obvious, and then we can talk about them. I'll answer any questions you have. One thing that is going to be interesting is this week, I'm going right now to San Diego, near San Diego, Carlsbad, to do this conference that we have this year. And one of the most striking things is that we usually open with Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, interviewing them on stage in these one-on-one interviews. This year we're opening with the Twitter guys, Evan Williams and Biz Stone. I always call them no biz like no biz because they have no revenues at Twitter. But he'll have to give me an answer at some point of how they're going to actually make money besides selling to Google, which is a good way to make money. Anyway, so it's interesting that we picked them this year because we felt like what they were doing, well, it's an insubstantial company in terms of revenues or any kind of possibility of profits at this point. It's still an important trend. And so we're opening with them, despite that we're also going to have Steve Ballmer there on Thursday, when he's going to reportedly launch the new search service from Microsoft, along with a whole range of other people, which I'll talk about in each of these areas. Let me talk about 5 trends that I think is really important. I think are very important. One is social, which is so obvious right now. 2 is the touch gesture movement, that is sort of the iPhone-inspired changes that are being made to computing, which are critically important. I think probably the most important of these 5. The 3rd is place, location, GPS, another critically important trend going on. And with that goes mobile. It's in the same area. The 4th is real time, which is a new trendy word. Silicon Valley manufactures trendy words more than anything else. And real time is the new trendy word right now. It essentially means right now, what's happening right now in people's lives. And the 5th, which is related to it, is called persistent data, which is actually an important term, even though it's a buzzword and it's become a buzzword. It's still a very important concept to be thinking about if you're thinking about creating companies. And you need to have at least some element of all of these 5 as you're starting to think, depending on the product you're making. If you're in devices, it's slightly different. But you have to be thinking about these things all the time. The first one, social, is dead obvious. I mean, everybody uses MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, all these different social. Twitter is a microblogging service, but these social networking services. And even the large companies, Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, have all tried to become social. One of the things about the web is, despite its dynamism, it's really actually a very static place, that you go to a site and then you go to another site and you go to another site, and you don't interact with the millions and billions of people interacting at the same time you are. So it sounds kind of idiotic. If you live in a city, it's as if you walked around a city and didn't speak to anybody, or you didn't interact with anybody. You had transactions with Amazon, you had transactions with people, you saw movie times. But largely, the web has been a non-interactive environment, even though you're interacting with the computer. It's sort of like the movie The Matrix. You're jacked into the Matrix in one of those little gel bubbles, and you don't do anything until you wake up and realize it's all fake, which it is, by the way. I don't know if you know that. So, despite the fact that Google, for example, has a lot of, tons and tons of information on there, again, it's just a point-and-click environment where you are not social at all. So the idea of social networks is sort of something that's come from the beginning of time. People are social. Humanity is social. They like to gather. They like to get together. They like to interact. They like to recommend. That is something that's a critically important thing when you're designing any company right now, is this idea of socializing whatever product you're making in technology. And it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily create a social, everything has to become a social network, because everybody doesn't want to. I belong to like 23 social networks, and I participate in precisely 0 of them. But I belong. But I join them and try them out and stuff like that, and some of them I find useful, some of them I don't. If you have a particular interest, some of the particular ones are interesting, though very few of them make any money at this point. Facebook is obviously right now the largest. It has 200 million people worldwide right now using the service, which is a gigantic number of people. They still haven't found a way to adequately monetize that audience. One of their problems is they're growing really heavily in small countries like, I don't know, they're not a small country. Turkey's a large country, but it's probably going to take, the people from Facebook, when I meet with them, because I've been questioning their financial wherewithal for a long time, besides getting venture investment. That's always a business plan for companies in the Valley. Venture investment is their business plan, which is really not a sustainable one. So it's true, believe me. Up there, all rules of budgeting are not the same as they are in the real world. I would like that. I'd like an investment, please, and I'd like to just keep spending and not make any money. Great, here's another $40 million, Kara. But anyway, Facebook is a really important trend because it's become this sort of worldwide universal address book for a lot of people. When they do grow in some of these where they're getting most of the growth is abroad, they're never going to monetize many of these countries. At one point, I think Mark Zuckerberg was like, hey, we're #1 in Turkey, and I'm like, that's not good news. Now everybody in Turkey is downloading all their videos and photos and everything up onto Facebook servers. Facebook is paying for those servers and paying for that heavy amount of bandwidth. And there's probably not a lot of online advertising opportunities in Turkey at this moment in time, given that our country's online advertising business is not that big yet either. It's going to take quite a long time for smaller countries to come on board in that way and be a robust financial engine for Facebook. So they're going to have very difficult times trying to figure out how to monetize any of this. The same thing with MySpace. MySpace got a very lucrative deal from Google, who was scared of Microsoft getting it, and so Google overpaid for their MySpace deal and has lost money ever since and are unhappy about it. Microsoft overpaid Facebook. Then they overpaid Dig, and then Google turned around and overpaid AOL. So this game isn't going to go on for much longer because most of these companies who actually make money, like Google and Microsoft, at some point aren't going to keep funding these things unless they start to truly make serious money. One of the things the problem that they have is that they haven't come up with a new system of advertising that's particularly effective on these social networks, because people are there to do social things and they don't really want to respond very well to advertising messages. They've done a couple things. They went out and claimed they had the most magical, innovative advertising system known to man, and then they never made it, which I thought was a problem. But some of their ideas are very small, as far as I can tell. There was one for Ben & Jerry's where they give away virtual ice cream cones to each other. I don't know. Somehow a great, massive international company is not based on handing out virtual ice cream cones to each other. And then those ideas they gave away Indiana Jones hats for a promotion for a movie. They gave away vitamin waters. That was, whatever. It's not something that's a sustainable business in terms of advertising. So they still have to figure out a way to be in the social space and start really making serious money the way, say, Microsoft does with its operating system, which is still a very lucrative business, despite the fact that we're moving away from those operating system paradigms. Microsoft still, that money just pours into Redmond, Washington still, despite the trends going the opposite way from that eventually. Google, of course, makes huge amounts of money. It's probably the only business that's really seriously making money on the internet. I mean, substantial amounts of money. And they're right now getting attacked by publishers and media companies, as well as advertisers, for being too powerful, because they sort of have a hammerlock on how people find things on the internet, even though you could easily move to Microsoft or Yahoo in the search arena. Right now, Google, I think, has 70-some% of the search market share, which is an astonishing number. And so the government, the Obama administration particularly, who was very close friends with the CEO of Google, is investigating the situation now. And Google's mightily trying to say, we're not thugs like Microsoft just because we control the entire internet. That said, they control the entire internet in many ways, the monetization of the internet. And they have to really start being very careful about how they behave. They recently tried to do a deal with Yahoo that didn't work out. I was very much against it because I don't think you should have, Yahoo has 20%, I think, something like that, so they'd get to a 90% share together. I felt that was monopolistic. They disagreed, the government agreed with those who disagreed with Google, thank goodness, and stopped the gathering of the pair. I always make a joke that Google is going to become self-aware in 2012 and start killing the human race. We know exactly what you're doing. But it is a really, it's a really important, powerful power in that way, and even in social ways and how people find and search and discover. And they could certainly start to get into other businesses rather easily with the amount of money they make. One of the most striking things of at Google is when you go to the Googleplex, which is down in Mountain View, California. It looks like a college campus for really, really rich kids. And they have all the toys that adult tech people must have, like bouncing balls and trampolines and all this incredibly childish food. It's funny. It's so funny to watch, to see that. But they do. They have it. That's their culture. And hot and cold running lattes and massages. They still have that, even though they say they're saving money. It means you only get 1 massage a week rather than 6. But it's really interesting to see the kind of the volume of information that passes through their servers on a single day. They have a board that comes up, and it's like a screen, and it comes up with the queries that are coming in every day. They take out the porn ones, which make up quite a bit of them, from what I understand, I've been told. And it's really interesting to watch the queries as they come in, and they're always weird, like, horse, beer, washcloth. Like, what are they looking for? I'm like, what does someone want with that? And I don't even want to know on that one. But it's, anyway, so it's a really interesting thing of these database of intentions. And now, as you move into the social space, when people are individually asking for queries, people are going to be, instead of asking Google, you're going to be asking each other. And you ask your friends or your friends of friends and things like that. And it's essentially replicating what happens in our world now with a much more efficient system of doing that. There's an old poem, what's his name? I can't remember. I learned it in college, and I've promptly forgotten everything I learned at college because it was 400 years ago. But there's an expression, paths are made by walking. And everybody walking in a certain direction will start to guide you. And so you'll be getting fewer cues from a Google and more cues from people around you. This does have its limitations, which I'll talk about when I get to real-time data, which is all about Twitter right now. The second thing that's really important is touch, gesture, movement. This is, I think, the most important thing that's happening in computing right now. If you keep up on tech news today, the secret Apple tablet that nobody knows about, which is written about pretty much 18 times a day by tech writers, is coming out very relatively soon. Steve Jobs, I think, hopes to introduce it if he gets better. And it will be essentially an iPhone that's slightly bigger than this and has wireless and phone capabilities if you want that, or just the iPod Touch capabilities. What iPhone has done has been a really important change in the way we think about computing. And I cannot underscore this enough. In 5 years, there will not be mouse. You won't have a mouse. You will not be pointing and clicking. You will not be in this paradigm of pages. And it's a way that you have to begin thinking about and designing for the web and thinking about running these companies, because all screens are going to go live everywhere. And it's not going to, I'll talk about where the screens are going to be, but the idea is it may not be the iPhone that wins this, but every single manufacturer of cell phones, every single manufacturer of devices are designing for touch, feel, movement, gesture. At our conference at D next week, we're showing every one of the demos is about a gesture-based device. Gesture, touch, voice recognition, facial recognition. You have to be thinking about this because it does change the computing paradigm, and you have to design differently and manage differently and think about advertising differently, which is going to supposedly pay for all this. When you're in this environment, you compute differently, you think about data differently, you think about everything differently. I don't know if you saw Minority Report a couple of years ago, but it was, Tom Cruise is a really bad actor, but that was a good movie, where he was doing this whole thing, here, this kind of thing. That is very possible today and very soon. The new Microsoft 7 is all touch-based, a lot of touch-based. The screens that are coming out for these computers are all touch-based. Finally, Bill Gates' great dream of the tablet is coming into much. He's always wanted to do tablets. He does it with a pen, but it's all going to be with a hand-based, gesture-based thing. I have 2 small kids, and both of them can't go up to a screen without trying to do this to it. They go like this. They understand a paradigm of touching. I want that. I want to look here. But it's beyond just touching the screen. It's also, it's not just touching the screen. It's actually interacting with it in a way that's much more immersive. I was just visiting HP's innovation labs. HP has been a very innovative company, and they're actually doing some really interesting things again. One of the things they have is this thing where you put on a ring, and then you get in front of the television set, And it knows the ring. It knows, it's like my pretty ring kind of thing. And you gesture. We're going to be showing one of these type of things that do this here. That you gesture and you move and you go that and this. And it works really well. It's not as, there's old versions of this were very, very bad. But it's the same thing with this idea of the screen. The Kindle, which is the ugliest device ever created, is still along that line. The idea of digital, that doesn't have touch. I can't believe they didn't put touch into that. But the new iPod Giant, I think that's what they're calling it, is going to have all touch and color. And I think if you have, guys don't have children, I don't know if you have children or not, but if you do, they do operate, they do everything in these small devices now. I did a story called My iKid Hijacked My iPhone. My kids, it's true though, they're always grabbing for the iPhone and they play games on it, they watch television on it, they do everything on these portable devices that move and that respond to movement too, besides touch and gesture. We're showing the thing at D that is a headphone that knows when you're moving and what you're doing, and it's telling you where to go and different things. It starts talking to you, as you're moving through space. It's a really interesting concept. Same thing with the idea of where screens are. One of the things we're hindered by is our screen technology, the expense of it, and the fact that everybody thinks of screens as on these laptops. I don't think there's going to be laptops in 10 years. I think these are not going to exist anymore in the way that the format they're in. Everything is a screen, and that's a really important concept. I should have brought this actual movie that Microsoft made. I'll send a link to it so you can go watch it. It's actually, they hired some outside people at Microsoft who actually don't hate the internet, and so they believe me, that took a long time for Microsoft not to begin to embrace the internet. The idea of screens everywhere is critically important, and everything being a screen. And the Kindle is the beginning of this. It's an e-ink technology where it's not a very good-looking ink, but it's improving drastically. And the prices are dropping, and that's what's really important. So everything is a screen. These will be screens, and you'll do this. You'll take your phone and you'll put it up against it, and whatever's here will go here. And you go like this. Some of the things they have at the HP lab is you put it near it and you just drag it into your phone. Or you put it down and it opens up, what do you want to look at? It becomes a circle, and then you just touch what you want to do or you want to delete or stuff like that. There's a thing that all of them are, this is going to be the fulcrum, which I'll be talking about, this or whatever smartphone you have. But another thing they're working on is you put it down on a thing, and this is, you won't have wires. This is electrified in some way, and I don't understand it. I'm not an engineer. I mean, I have no idea what it's I call it magic. You put it down. When I came to the journal, I did not an engineering grad, but I said, I'm not going to tell you how the clock works. I'll tell you what time it is, which I think is more important. Although not to people who make clocks, I guess. So you put it down, and you don't need wires to do anything with it. It charges right there. They are having issues of electrifying children, but they'll get over those. They are. Yeah, you imagine. So that's really important to think about, the idea of that you don't need these big computers at all, that everything is a screen, that your device will then touch things and they become screens. And so Microsoft had a thing we showed at D a couple years ago called the Surface Table. It was this giant table. It's big. We called it the big ass table to Bill Gates. The whole time you could see him getting angry. He's not the easiest person to deal with, let's just say that. But it was as big as that, and you did things like, they did stupid things like they had water and you touched it and it flowed. I'm like, that's pointless. I mean, it's fun, you just kept hitting the water, but I could have gone to my sink and done the same thing. But they were showing that, but that idea of a surface table is a really important concept, the idea of tables and furniture, everything becoming a kind of a screen kind of thing that's able to move information back and forth is critically important. With this device, with a device that you carry that's portable being the thing that controls all of that, but the ability to actually see it bigger so you don't need to constantly carry around 2 or 3 a large laptop computer like this. The third thing that's really important is place. That's really important in this. Location-based everything. Everything is, whatever you think about privacy, there's major issues for our government, which has other issues to deal with besides, can I find someone with a cell phone? But place is a really important idea when you're designing these things, where people are, where you can recommend things. A lot of the widgets on the iPhone screen, for example, are all about place, recommending where I have a widget for where Starbucks is, I have a widget where gas is, I have a widget where that kind of thing. And the ability, what Google's doing with its maps is really quite astonishing. The ability to find yourself. I mean, when's the last time you actually pulled out a map now? If you're in a digital environment, My mother still does, but most people don't. They're able to go onto whatever smartphone they have and find themselves instantly. Place is really important because it'll be able to download the correct information to you as you want it and as you need it. The typical example that's used is if you pass a Starbucks, they happen to know what you like, and they tell you can have 50% off if you come in right now. It'll tell you on your phone or whatever earphone thing you're using. It's really interesting in terms of shopping, in terms of all kinds of things. Again, in that Minority Report movie, I don't know if you remember, he walked into the Gap, he had someone else's eyes, and they were like, Mr. Fujiyama, obviously Mr. Tom Cruise is not Mr. Fujiyama. Last time you bought fleece, would you like this time? Really important, the idea of where you are. The same thing having to do with data, like what will be newspapers in the future, is the idea of that what you're reading comes to you based on where you are and what you're doing. And you're able to touch these things and move aside stories that aren't of interest to you. If any of you watch the Harry Potter movies, which are terrific movies, they're always looking at that thing, and things are moving within the pictures, things are moving within the newspapers that they have. That's entirely possible very soon, where you'll have a single loose piece. Plastic Logic's working on a thing where you have a single very flexible piece of technology, of a screen essentially, and it changes based on where you are, what you want, what you press, and things like that. It's really very much closer than people think. I know people think it's very futuristic, but I mean, we weren't using cell phones 15 years ago, essentially. I mean, really, very heavily. I mean, I had a suitcase, and I looked like a total geek, but I was able to call people from the park. So the fourth thing that's critical, anyway, GPS technology is just critically important about that. There are some troubling implications about the government being able to find you, you being able to be located. I know she was saying one of the winners of your venture thing had a thing that found your digital leash for your cell phone, and you could also attach it to your children, which is interesting. We actually tested one of those, a similar kind of thing where you put it on your kids and then you tried to locate them, but the kids are always 2 blocks away from where the device said it was, which to me is a critical issue. If you have small children, you don't want them to be 2 blocks away with the pedophile. You want them to be right there. You want to find them. And so I was like, they're like, well, it almost works. I'm like, what? Like, I almost found my children, but they got away, and moved to Ukiah with some creep. No, I want them to be located. I always joke that I'm going to have my children chipped someday, in their head so I can find them. And see what they're up to. But believe me, that's something people are working on. And I think probably there will be especially with medical stuff. Some of the new I'm not as up to speed as I should be, but a lot of the stuff I've seen in the medical area has a lot to do with chipping people, especially heart attacks. Because, for example, with a heart attack, you actually have had it before you get to the hospital, and sometimes they don't pick up the fact that you actually did have one, and then they send you home, and then you go home and die. So a lot of these things will take a lot of the stuff in the self-chipping things are all about monitoring your medical stuff. Some of them are weird. A lot of the stuff in Japan that they're doing about the toilets that monitor everything you do on the toilet is frankly a little much as far as I'm concerned, but they're coming. We tested a real-time, one of those kind of toilets that you walk up to it and it opens and says hello. If you're a man, it goes up 2, so that solves a good problem. Having 2 boys, I understand that problem now. But it lifts the toilet twice from the 2 seats for a man, once for a woman, and then it knows what drying cycle you like, what water pressure you like. It's interesting. It was good. It went crazy at D on the stage and sprayed everybody, which was so much fun. It's made by Toto. It's actually pretty cool. They actually have them at Google in all the bathrooms, which is interesting. I had it installed in my house, and this friend of mine came over who has trouble dating, and I had to send it back because I don't keep things. And he walked out of the bathroom and he goes, "What happened to my girlfriend?" Which was kind of funny, which was kind of disturbing. Anyway, I don't know what he was talking about. The fourth thing that's really important, that is critically important, is real time. How many of you guys use Twitter? Not many. Young people don't use Twitter. It's an old person's technology. It's really interesting. I'm sorry? It is. No, it is. I'm telling you, it's of the media, Oprah and Ashton Kutcher, whoever he is. It's really interesting. Twitter is not being used by young people. The demographics of it are much older, which is somewhat interesting. I find that interesting. I think how many of you use Facebook? Probably, right, everybody. And you put your status on Facebook, right? That's how you update your status. Well, adults, you're not adults, you are adults, but older people don't like Facebook as much because it can be very confusing. And so they're using Twitter, and so is the media, and it's interesting that younger people aren't using Twitter. I'd be curious to see if you do in a year use Twitter, if you move to it, because you might or might not. You might think 140 characters is not enough time to talk about what you want, but you'd be surprised how inane people can get in 140 characters. There's a joke, there was a funny video that went around the internet called Flutter, which was 26 characters. And it was a joke video that if 140 characters is just too much to read, so we created Flutter, which is, and they squished words together. It was pretty funny. But one of the things, Twitter, whether you use it or not, it's taken the Valley by storm right now. It's sort of the obsessionary company. Every 5 years, there has to be a company that captivates the Valley. It was Facebook until recently. Facebook is now, what the hell is that? Before that, it was Friendster. Before that, it goes way back right to Netscape kind of thing, which is no longer. So the Valley tends to fall in love with these companies and then abandon them, but it's, they're like, I always say venture capitalists are like a bunch of teenagers, and they just move on. Oh, now it's halter tops. Now we're moving to this. And everybody gets a halter top, and they wear them. And then, oh, we don't like halter tops. It's, whatever, kitten heels. So that'd be funny to see some of these venture capitalists in kitten heels. I know it's a shock to you, but it's usually venture capitalists. Incredibly, whenever I go to these events, it's always it's a bunch of white guys with khakis and Oxford shirts, essentially, and me. There's occasionally an Asian guy and an Indian guy, and very seldom women. It's still a problem. I mean, some of the companies are improving, but it's still pretty much a very monochromatic experience when you're dealing with venture capitalists. But real-time data is important. Twitter is more than a trend. It's more than a silly celebrity like Ashton Kutcher collecting 1 million followers. It's about getting information real time, which is really important when you think about it, because if you go to just Google, I'll use Google or Yahoo, any of them, when you're searching for something, you get the data. If you go for Chrysler, you'll find all the data on Chrysler, and you'll find good data, probably the right data right away. If you're looking for a Chrysler, well, you wouldn't be buying a Chrysler car, they wouldn't be going out of business. All right, let's think of a car people do want to buy, a Mini. Okay, you search for it, you find information very quickly on it, and good information, very accurate information. Real-time data will tell you what people are thinking about the Mini at any 1 minute, and that is also important to marketers. So if there's not just products, but news events, all kinds of things that are happening immediately are critically important in a real-time data environment. And Google and some of the other search engines do not surface this. So if there's a speech by President Obama, that you can get instant reaction to it. You can get instant reaction by a lot of people, and as Twitter grows, which it truly is growing very quickly, it's getting up to, I think, 32 million unique visitors this month from like 3 last month. They're all visiting what Oprah has to say, which is pretty much nothing. Well, she's not a very good Twitter, although Gail, her friend Gail, I say her friend, Gail, she always, she Twitters and she forgets it's 140 characters, and she goes, I'm right now in the car, and then it goes off, and then she goes, oops, I did too many, and she keeps doing it like 20 times. I'm like, Gail, it's 140, try to keep it in mind. But it's really interesting how fast it's growing and how important that is, the idea of real-time data, finding out what's happening right now. Twitter right now, there's rumors that none of them are true, but there are major offers from Google, Microsoft, all the big companies, Comcast, all kinds of companies are looking at Twitter to buy it for almost $1 billion. It makes no money. It makes no revenues. That's even worse. I mean, it's like no money is very typical for making no profits is typical for Silicon Valley, but no revenues is not. And the fact that it's making no revenues and people are looking at it shows you how important people think this trend is, this idea of real-time data. There's all sorts of companies popping up all around Twitter, such as Tweety. They'll have idiotic names. Tweety, Twittery. I call it Twiddly. Everybody lives in Twiddly, or San Fran Twitco. But you can make all sorts of games. They're all idiotic names. But there are all sorts of companies created around the Twitter ecosystem, some of which are actually making money. There's one that Microsoft sponsored, which is called Executweets, which people, I swear to God, it's actually an interesting thing. All these, they take famous executives who are tweeting, and you can follow them. and Microsoft sponsored it. I'm not sure why, but there's all kinds of interesting, innovative things being done around advertising. And they certainly have business plans that are possible. They could sell the namespace, you know, in Twitter, owning your name, and brands owning their name in Twitter. Network Solutions makes a lot of money doing that on the internet. They could certainly do that. They could put advertising in it. They've talked not about that. They don't want to necessarily they could stick Google-based advertising down the side of searches. One of the things that's got everybody hot and bothered is real-time search, which is search alongside regular search. I'm a little more, I have some questions about the idea of real-time search. I'll give you a really horrible example in my own life. My kids, all year, if you have small children, eventually you'll find this, get head lice. My kids didn't have it, and I was like, we're so clean. And then, of course, the last weeks of school, they get head lice, which was terrifically fun. And now, actually, you can hire people to take care of it, which is great. But that's neither here nor there. I went on to Google, found out all kinds of information about head lice. Tons of information, everything you want to know. And you really don't want to know that much about head lice, but I, in fact, am an expert now. I don't have it, by the way, so I'm clean. I put my kid in like a box and put him until he was clean. You can find all sorts of really good information, It's astonishing the amount of information there is, not just on questionable sites, but all kinds of sites. And so it was great to be able to do that, to have that availability of information. And then I went, the library had a lot of information on, I don't go to the library anymore, but they did. They do have, the kids' library had a lot of information on lice. And I went to Twitter, which I thought, okay, I'll see how real-time search works for this problem. It's a problem. I wanted information. I wanted to hire people. I wanted to buy products. I wanted to take an action. And Twitter pretty much was, ew, head lice. You're a piece of head lice. Head lice is gross. You're a nit. It was like useless to the point of idiocy and annoyance. And nothing on Twitter was helpful in any way to solving a problem or allowing me to spend money on a problem, which Google facilitated, so did Yahoo. The only other way I could have possibly gotten help from them is to put a Twitter up saying, my kids have head lice, can you help me? Do I really want to do that? I mean, think about I have gonorrhea. What is your best method of the rash thing? It just doesn't work. It doesn't work unless you're, unless you're in Italy and I'm in Florence and I'd like a restaurant. That might work. That might work if you have followers. I don't know if you know how Twitter works. It's a follow-follow system, which is actually kind of, compared to Facebook, it's actually Facebook should institute it. In Facebook, you can only follow your friends, and they can only follow you if they agree to be your friends. On Twitter, people can follow you without your agreement, and you can follow people without asking people. So it's more of it works really well for celebrities and things like that, but all kinds of people. We publish a lot on Twitter, and it's actually really useful. So that said, the idea of real-time search is important, and you'll see Google and all the every company is going to be instituting real-time data as you're doing it. And the way I think this is more important is, the last thing, and then we'll take questions, is the idea of persistent data is probably the better word for it, because real-time data is a trendy word that's going to go away. All it's saying is what's happening right now. It's not yeah, okay. The ability to find out what's happening really right now. But one of the things that's important is this persistent data, and that is data available anywhere, anytime, wherever you are when you need it. Right now, this sort of this hunt and search for data that goes on right now, you go to Google, you go to Yahoo, you get the information, you take it back. Sometimes you write it down on a slip of paper. It's really inefficient in terms of what these technologies can provide you. And so persistent data is data that's around all the time, that has a knowledge of you and what you want. And this idea that they're pushing right now in Silicon Valley is this, Yahoo's calling it this, Yahoo always comes up with lame names for things, but it's actually a smart idea. It's a web of objects, not a web of pages. So it's a web of things you want, places you want to go. When you call up, say, Beyonce, instead of just getting a page, they're calling it kill the blue links. That's their new trend. Yahoo's trying to save itself desperately, and they have all sorts of new expressions now. But they're right about killing the blue links. That when you call up Beyonce, they should know about what you want. You either want her music, you either want to buy tickets, or you want to buy information. Same thing, they use the example of Star Trek. And when you're calling up Star Trek, most people want to see the movie. That's what they want to do. And so the ability to serve up that information right away, knowing in your geographic sense and in this persistent data kind of state is really important if they want to make money at this, which is the goal of most of these companies. Some of them are not, it's not the goal, but So the idea of having this stuff served up and them knowing what most people want and what you want is really important. In the case of Star Trek, it would show the movie times, it might show trailers from it, it might show pictures, you might want pictures, and the guy from Yahoo was like, not everyone wants to read the 10 million pages about Star Trek. I said, well, some people do. Actually, some of the Trekkies do, but most people have the same intent of what they're doing. There's not that many, people are much more the same than they are different. And so a lot of these search engines are really in their Neanderthal state, and you have to be thinking of them in a different state where the data surrounds you rather than you go to it, pull it out, bring it back. And so the idea of surrounding data is really important in the environment. And the critical thing in persistent data is the cell phone, which this is a computer. This is more powerful than the computer I had in college. If you think, it's incredible what's in here. What's in here and what's in the Blackberries, and the Pre is about to come out next week on June 6th, which is Palm's last attempt to be relevant. It's actually a terrific phone. It's rounder than this one. I think it's aimed at a woman's market. It has a different look. It's a little rounder version of this, and it has a keyboard that pulls down. But not this one, because this is expensive, but the idea of getting these to a really cheap price. Companies like Nokia and Ericsson are going to start to make these for $47 or whatever. So they're available worldwide where everyone's going to have one of these computing devices. These really help in a persistent data universe where you're pulling information constantly, and it's constantly updating, and it's sitting in the cloud. I know you've all heard about cloud computing. It really is it's the same thing, the persistent data of cloud computing. It's again another buzzword, but the idea of that everything's in the clouds, it's not sitting on your computer, it's not static. And you have to be thinking of data moving everywhere as you move, and it knows where you are, what you're doing, and what you want, kind of things. And so these are critically important, and the price of these is going to come down significantly in terms of everyone on the planet getting one. Right now, most people do not have computers in this planet. Most people if they access the internet, they access it on a mobile device. Most of India does that. Most of the developing countries do that. They do not have computers. They've never had them. They never will have them. They're in a wireless environment. That's the other thing, wireless. Our country is appalling in its lack of commitment to wireless, high-speed broadband access. I was interviewing a guy who was the first funder of Yahoo, who was from Korea, and he sort of looked at me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you Americans. You're like the third world of broadband." We are. It's astonishing. Dropping calls should not happen. It's a joke in the commercial, but it's ridiculous that we don't have a system where we can do this, because the only way these things are going to become important and get important information to people is through these devices. And it's almost as if back in the 30s or the 20s, we said, wouldn't we need a federal highway system? Dirt roads are really good, that kind of thing. The federal highway system changed our country in terms of development and modernization and healthcare and all kinds of, and intelligence actually, in terms of raising the intelligence and dumbifying the country too. But at the same time, it was really critically important. The same thing with the universal telephone. It's as if we're saying tin cans are great for most people. They're not great for most people, especially around the world. And what's really important, I'll end with this, is you've got to get to the state where these things are cheap, where wireless is available everywhere, and people can pull down information. A lot of companies, from Google to Microsoft, are working on these ideas of getting data to poor farmers in India where they get the correct prices, where they're not cheated by middlemen, getting accurate healthcare data on these things. It's important. It's not just downloading whatever the hell Britney Spears bikini she has on this week, although that's quite a bit of my searching kind of stuff. But I think it's very important data is coming down through these things, especially for bringing up people in the developing world. One of the most striking things when you go to Google, if you ever get the chance, they have a globe. They have this big glowing globe that's on a screen. It's a 3D globe, but it's actually on a screen, and it circles. It goes around in a circle, and it's a depiction of where. They have one that depicts where all the information is that you're getting it from, which is just lit up. There's another that shows queries around the world, all the queries that are coming into Google, which are trillions of queries all the time, and are people putting stuff into YouTube. I think there's in 24 hours, there's more stuff uploaded in terms of video into YouTube than in the whole planet since the beginning of time, kind of thing. And they show in different colors what languages people are speaking. I think red is English, blue is German, whatever people are speaking. And then the length of the light stream coming out of the globe is how many queries are coming. And so you go to the United States, and I think it's white. I think the United States is white. English is white, and you see the whole country is lit up, especially in the cities, but throughout the whole country is lit up. High. Big cities have big, high things. Smaller cities have smaller things, but it's actually quite beautiful to look at the data being asked for, and those are questions being asked by people, which means they're trying to become intelligent in some way. And so the huge things, you go around to Europe, huge colors, it's pretty because Europe is pretty because there's so many different languages, so that's beautiful. China, a lot of light in India, a lot of it. You spin around to Africa, there's no light coming out of Africa. It tells you the story of what's happening in that continent very quickly in data, in what people are asking for. There's a little tiny one coming from South Africa, tiny. There's a little tiny one coming from Kenya. It is the dark continent. It is amazing, and that means nobody's asking questions. Nobody's getting information. They're not getting good information or bad information. Who cares? They're not getting any information. And so a continent of people that aren't asking questions is a people that are not moving forward. And so we got to be thinking about these things. And if these things can get super cheap for these people, and you get them in their hands, they'll be doing things for themselves as much as we fear technology, and we think, you know, I'm going to go see the Terminator movie tonight later, but the idea that they're going to take over. The fact of the matter is, for many people, it does bring them to a state that is much healthier because they are in systems. And so companies like Microsoft, companies like Google, they're trying to get all this information online in order for these people to be able to access it, because most people do live still, too many people live in the kind of ignorance. So it's well beyond these kind of trendy, what's the next trendy little stupid device coming out, you know, on Facebook and stuff like that. And so you've got to be thinking in this touch world, in this world of persistent data, what you can create to make these devices so inexpensive that everyone in the world can access information, and then they can decide what to do with it. And we can't make decisions, because it doesn't really matter. I mean, a lot of people talk about Twitter and everything like that, how much stupid stuff is in there. It doesn't matter what's in there. All that matters is everything is in there. And so we have to be thinking of the world as this sort of constant human knowledge being placed in these databases, again, good or bad, and ultimately it is ultimately, I think, personally, for the good. And so you have to sort of start to think about the idea of data just surrounding us, and it being probably a good thing for humanity, for energy, for all kinds of things. And so that's it. So anybody has any questions? I'll do that.
So here we go. In terms of online newspapers, some, such as SFGate, become kind of free information and lifestyle portals, while others, just formerly the New York Times, like for example, so others, not the New York Times, but
we charge,
like the
Journal charges.
Yeah, well, that's that's the whole thing. So the Journal charges, they use a subscription model. And do you think paying for content is dead, or is its utility commensurate with the host?
All right, I'm going to tell you two different things. The company that hired me, I'm under contract with the Journal. Rupert Murdoch very much believes that content can be paid for, and the Journal does do a very strong subscription business. It's a nice business. They do very well. I think it's $100 million revenue, something like that. I think that's about right. I do not. I think right now it's really hard to pull you know, where the cows are out of the barn or where the horses are out of the barn kind of thing. People are used to information being free. I think the New York Times going back to a paid system, which didn't work the first time, is impossible. The other thing is there's so much really good information online that's free now. There's a lot of really good tech sites. Forget it, we couldn't charge. I mean, unless I'm like sending everybody like a pound of pot with every post, I think it's just not going to work. I mean, I used to sit in the back of, the Journal wanted to create a Saturday newspaper, which they did, and they had different people come in, and they did. What? The Weekend. They wanted to do that, but they wanted to do a Saturday. They had the Weekend Journal, but then they wanted to do the Saturday Journal, and I was like, who the hell wants to read the newspaper on Saturday? But that was just me. And so they'd invite me to these meetings, and they'd sit in the back. They're like, how can we get young people to read the newspaper? And I was like, they don't want to. They don't want to read the newspaper. They like getting it online. And when I used to go to colleges to speak, they'd always go, you know, all the teens would be like, I don't read the newspaper. I said, where do you get your news? They're like, NewYorkTimes.com. I'm like, it's the same thing. Like, you know, however they want to read it is what's important. And I think one of the things that newspaper people don't get is that they mess up the distribution with the value of what they're providing. And so we do believe in brands. I still believe in brands, even in the online environment. Excellent, but Times is in very serious financial trouble as an institution. Most people don't want to read print anymore. That's the way it is. And they seem to not want to accept this. You know what I mean? Like, so I would put all my focus on online and try to figure out an advertising system to replace what's happening. I mean, the statistics are just, I mean, you almost are like, do you read statistics? It's like, it's like this. You know what I mean? Like if you're looking at this and then costs are going like this with paper and printing, and plus the environmental impact, people don't want to waste paper. I mean, I don't like reading stuff. So I think, no, I don't think I think possibly some content you can charge for. Yes, there's some specialized content that you might be able to charge for that's really, if you're a big stock trader getting all sorts of inside information about currencies. What? I'm sorry? Yeah, you could charge for that stuff, but general news, it's commodity. It's an absolute commodity.
My question is, what, with this digitalization, the physical touching and moving and shaping and everything, and us just sort of living in this digital world, what happens to kind of our perception of our physical reality and our interactions and just daily interaction with the environment, and also what is the impact on the physical environment? If you have instead of a newspaper, you have this digital device that's a lot of components, a lot of chips, a lot of that. Doesn't that harm our physical environment?
I actually, you could argue that it doesn't. It gets rid of newspapers. It doesn't kill trees. It creates something that's just constantly recyclable. That's one argument you could make for these things. Secondly, I actually think instead of staring down at screens, when things are right there, you do tend to look up more. When it's more of a movement-based system and it's reacting to you as a physical being, I prefer those computing paradigms versus this. This is me with this kind of thing. It's not going to be, it's going to be bigger. You're still going to be doing that, but it'll be, some of these things now can broadcast a screen onto something. They're kind of crude, but they actually broadcast a little screen. I think you can argue all you want that you don't like technology, but we're sort of down that road. It's like sort of arguing against cars. It's like, well, okay, you're right, but go ahead and walk to work. Go ahead, you know what I mean? It's like arguing against planes. My brother doesn't fly. I hate planes. I'm like, oh, well, the world stops because you don't like planes. But it's a pointless. It's right. There's a lot of people who don't like it. They think it dehumanizes us. But I think we were down that road a million years ago. And the other thing is, I think it's actually better when people select and choose. Television stations used to have 3. You put on whatever stupid show they wanted to. The television networks, their business is collapsing so fast they don't know what to do. And so how do you create a hit? You create, now look at what the hits are. Reality-based stuff where you can't stop but look away from those housewives of New Jersey, like, oh my God, are they as stupid as can be? And it's still you watch. Like American Idol does very well because you have to watch it then. It's an event-based kind of thing. Sports, news does very well. A lot of these dramas just don't last, which is really troubling for Hollywood. But they cost too much. Right now, what's interesting too is people watching online, which is when they want to watch. Now they're making Hulu is one of their few successes. Right, you watch Hulu, right? You can get most of it. It's annoying that they put it on days later. I'm a huge Gossip Girl fan, and I'm pissed off. I can't see the kiss. I did see it. It was all over YouTube, but I love that show. I love Chuck Bass. I love Chuck Bass. He's great. He's great. I love her better, more. Blair, Chair. I call them Chair is what you call them, right? But anyway, all that stuff is moving online. I think it's better when consumers have choice and there's not a hammerlock of some big company telling you. What will be interesting to see is if producers of these creators and creative people can seize control from Hollywood, these networks. Because I think most creative people in Hollywood, I call them overpaid slaves. They don't take any risks. If you go down to Hollywood versus Silicon Valley, you own a piece of the company. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not a negative thing if it doesn't work in Hollywood. Nobody owns anything but the networks. The creators of whatever Star Trek don't own Star Trek. The people who made it, the actors that are in it should own it, not that some giant company. It'll be interesting to see if that will, the finance, it has to shift because the money, the movie industry is actually doing very well lately, but the piracy of Wolverine, that was an interesting, although they did better than ever before. Wolverine did great, and it was stolen, I guess, on the internet. I didn't watch it. They fired people at News Corp for watching it online or admitting to it. Any other questions?
Okay. I have a question about the Wall Street Journal. I pretty much go online about every night to read the articles, but then they give you like 2 sentences and they cut you off. You have to pay for the rest.
Right.
So what do you think the best alternative, like free financial and investment information is?
All things digital. Are you interested in tech? We compete with them. We compete with the Wall Street Journal. But for general news, that's the way they're doing it. If you think the Wall Street Journal's coverage is better, that's what you're gonna have to pay the price. If there's a lot of really good free stuff. If you want the Wall Street Journal, the journal's telling you our stuff is better, and therefore you're going to pay for it. And a lot of it is. Not all of it, but a lot of it is. They're having more trouble. They give away some things that they know they can't be competitive on, like movie reviews are free, the whole thing, because it's really hard. Like, they're giving away they're putting behind the wall stuff that they can sell, and they're putting outside the wall. The journal's trying to do both, and they're succeeding in some ways. I think the problem is, at some point, a lot of the free stuff is getting better and better and better, and that's what they're going to run into. Do you really have to read the Wall Street Journal's version, or can you read the New York Times' version? And what's great is what's happening is all these bloggers, some of whom are terrible, some of whom are good, they're getting better. They're really getting better, not just a little bit. And so, I rely on people you've never heard of. And so new brands are being created that are reliable. I think what has to happen is the improvement of standards has to go up drastically for bloggers, and then old media is in big trouble. Because, one thing I hated, I love not working for a big media. I mean, I work for a big media company, but I don't. They never call them. Like, I never pick up the phone when they call. But we have a contract so that we don't have to listen to them that much, but because we wanted to create this sort of skunk works idea within the Dow Jones environment. But one of the things that was really important is that we got to decide on charging or not charging, what we put up, what we don't put up, how we write headlines. And I think there's more and more experiments like that with high quality sites, and that's probably, they'll charge as long as they can charge. And then but they've seen an increase, so their business is obviously working for them, and they make a good. I mean, it's the only one. I think the Journal's the only one that has a substantial subscription business. I think the Times failed badly. They put all their columnists that everyone wanted to read behind the wall, then nobody read their columnists. So, they gave them up. I think people give up things if they find an alternative. Continue.
You think people would pay for it if there was an effective micropayment scheme, so that instead of him having to buy a monthly subscription, he could choose to pay 6 cents to read the article?
Yes, people say so.
And what's the history of that? I've seen a few, and then they go away.
Yep, they do.
Why?
Because people don't like them. They're weird. The only place people pay micropayments for, if you think about it, is iTunes.
Right.
And I'm sure
telephone calls.
I'm sure none of you steal music.
In the old days, telephone calls.
What?
And in the old days, telephone calls.
Right, cell phone calls, kind of things like that. But I think people, it's just not done well. In Japan, they do. Their cell phones are money. They point at food things and they buy. There's a lot of vending machines in Japan. They point at things, and this is their money thing.
Don't you think if the back end were executed so that it was seamless, people would just adopt it easily?
I would agree, but it's never been done right. It's just never been done right. People distrust putting their name. I think I would distrust. I do. I don't put my name in a single. I don't want Microsoft to maintain my credit, or who would do it? Who does it? And then who do you decide? And then there's competing systems, and so there's never who is the overall system? Your bank, So then it becomes utterly, if anyone has ever tried online banking, it's confusing at best, kind of thing. And so I think it's really hard to decide what the standards, and I don't think they're ever, that's what newspaper people are pushing right now, micropayments, which is, I just get a headache. I've been covering it for a decade, and it's just never become, PayPal is somewhat effective, but again, those are for things you're buying.
They're still too big.
They're too big, yeah. I agree. I don't know, do I want to pay 3 cents? Well, that article wasn't worth 3 cents. I should have paid 2 cents. I don't know. It just seems like, I just find that confusing to me as a consumer, but maybe they'll figure out something that's easy. I think subscriptions people get right away. They understand subscriptions. So I suspect that's still going to stay in force. And micropayments, again, iTunes is the most successful version of micropayments, and piracy is still vastly larger than anything Apple is. And Apple is the most successful at it. And again, piracy. Piracy is a great business. That's what an executive from NBC told me. Piracy is a terrific business plan, and it is. It's a great business plan. Anything else?
I wanted to acknowledge one of our sponsors is with us tonight. I didn't want to follow necessarily on piracy, but thank you, Tom Hopkins
porn works.
Shepard Mullen for your support over the years. And Kara Swisher, thank you for joining us, Technology Management Programs, University of California, Santa Barbara.
Thanks.